Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to Women's Mosque of America 2026. I'm trying to do two things at one time. Qur'an Literacy Program, discussion number 6. I'm going to open up with a dua, and then we will get started because, as always, we have a lot of ground to cover, and I can't wait to hear the discussion today. I'm always so excited about what you all have to say. It's been so insightful. So let's open up without that. Yeah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. Assalamu alaikum. As you're coming in, welcome. Um, we have a lot to ground to cover. So I'm going to let our very capable Nadia Shaiq get started. And near the end, then we'll talk a little bit about some of the announcements that we have, some of the really interesting things that we have coming up. Okay, we'll just do it that way. Okay, Nadia, it is all yours.
So, in today's discussion, we're going to be focusing from month 6 of the curriculum. And again, if you're not on the 1 year track and you're not on month 6, don't even worry, because we're going to be going through all the details, and it is more about bringing your voice and opinions and experience. But we're going to be exploring the story, at least the beginning parts of the story of Prophet Joseph or Yusuf, as told by God in the Quran, from a psychological perspective to make connections to today. And I'll be breaking in pieces from month 6 in the QLP curriculum, becoming a person of both truth and beauty, focusing on days 140 to 148. So, as always, if there's things you think about here, you can use them in Discord for to also put in your thoughts there, so you can knock two birds with one stone. But before we break for usher prayer, if we could just go around again, and remember, we do these openers or icebreakers based on this Quranic principle of getting to know each other. From Quran verse 49:13, O humanity, behold, we have created you all out of a male and a female, and have made you into nations and tribes, so that you might come to know one another. Verily, the noblest of you in the sight of God is the one who is most deeply conscious of God. Behold, God is all-knowing, all-aware. One of the beauties of QLP is the differences we bring in experiences, in age, in backgrounds, in geographic locations, in histories, in cultures, and what an amazing way for us to know one another and through that getting to know humanity as we learn through God. So my opening question now, and I'm going to put it in the chat here, is I am a person of both truth and beauty because. Now, if you hear that and automatically your stress hormones go up, that is exactly why I put this in the chat. So, particularly as women, we are often taught to be self-deprecating. We're taught to think less of ourselves, and we're taught to talk about that so we don't seem like we are too full of ourselves or egotistical or anything like that. We haven't been taught in general in this country how to celebrate the parts of ourselves that are doing really amazing things. So part of the icebreakers in this program are designed to force us in a safe space to start to acknowledge and celebrate some of those parts of ourselves. So this month is talking about, in the Qur'an Literacy Program, month number 6, being a person of both truth and beauty, and how those two things can coincide and do coincide by following God's words. So Candace, thank you so much. Can we start with you?
Salam, I'm Candace. I'm a person of truth and beauty because I love being with toddlers when they observe simple things that spark joy for them, like bubbles, planes, clouds, and birds. I share and delight with the kids and have fun living in the moment, even for just a short while. So glad for babysitting, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And what a great way to start, because then I'm thinking, I do that too. I'm also a person of truth and beauty. Like, that's why it's so powerful for us to share from ourselves.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I was thinking about this I'm a person of truth and beauty, and I started thinking about what I have to offer, what I enjoy, and what other people gain from me. And then it was all conditions. So then I thought about maybe I'm a person of truth and beauty just because I was created by Allah. And that was it.
Subhanallah. And that explanation was so powerful. And how you got there and where you started from and what conditions we imposed on ourselves, and then we go where you landed on. And a lot of our journey in QLP this year, as we're reading from the Quran, particularly it's going to come up in the story of Yusuf, is how sometimes the original things we think of are limited, but when we just kind of think about with a God-focused lens, then suddenly things are unlimited just by being created by God. I love that. I'm going to go ahead and go, if that's okay. I was one who needed to write it out first, so I'll read what I have. So I did the specific phrasing. This week I was a person of truth and beauty when I was talking to a younger person about makeup and applying makeup or not applying makeup. And my mind originally went to something to kind of come down hard, and instead they actually told me, I just want you to hear me. So I took a step back and I actually listened, and I understood the feeling behind what they were saying and empathized with that, and then was able to ask questions as opposed to me just saying something, and it was a conversation that got us to that really was in the line of some of the examples in the Quran and in Hadith about how are we soft with each other and listening to each other and asking questions rather than imposing. So that's my.
I came up with the same as Sister Kanwa.
Share it.
So I am a person of truth and beauty because I exist, and I think about all of the emotions, whether I'm happy or sad or anxious. I think about my, just being able to breathe throughout the day and be in awe of certain things. It feels like there's constant energy and movement and creativity and just all this stuff that happens just because I am.
I love that. Thank you so much. And so true. We think it's simple, but if you go to the microscopic level like you were sharing, it's so complicated just every second of existing. SubhanAllah.
My name is Gwen, and I'm a person of truth and beauty because this week I chose vulnerability over maintaining a long-term lie. And I asked for help from a high school friend who lives back in my hometown.
Wow. SubhanAllah. I love that wording of choosing vulnerability because it is a difficult choice sometimes. It's so powerful. Thank you for sharing. Back to this verse of 49:13 that we use for our icebreakers. I want to read it one more time and just think of what we may have gotten from listening to each other's conversations about why we are people of truth and beauty. So again, O humanity, behold, we have created you all out of a male and a female and have made you into nations and tribes so that you might come to know one another. Verily, the noblest of you in the sight of God is the one who's most deeply conscious of God. Behold, God is all-knowing and all-aware. I think it's so important for us to acknowledge and celebrate those moments where we are deeply conscious of God and thinking about how we are people of truth and beauty, which is, again, the theme for month 6 in the curriculum, forces us to really acknowledge how we are being conscious of God. All right. So, like I said, I'm going to go back to this opening topic. Today, we're diving into the story of Prophet Joseph or Yusuf. We're not going to be able to do the whole story because it's there's so much to do in there. There's so much to talk about. Great stuff to talk about. It could be multiple sessions that we spend. So we're going to talk about the first 22 ayahs or so. This is one of my favorite parts of the QLP curriculum. So whenever you get, if you aren't there already, whenever you get to month 6 in the curriculum, it is a special one. The work Hasna did in her analysis of the surah and reflection questions is really phenomenal. There's lots of different ways for us to approach the Quran, lots of different forms that we can study it. We can look at it from a scientific perspective. We can look for it from a historical perspective, from a linguistic perspective. Today we're going to talk about some of the psychological perspectives that come out through the surah and how we can make connections today. All right, so we're going to start. So at the top, you'll see this is Surah 12, and we're going to start with the first 3 verses. Now, these 3 verses talk about the Quran, Arabic, and reason, and it shares the exact reason why the Quran was revealed in Arabic. We actually have talked about this in our QLP sessions this year, about reading in Arabic versus reading in English, and the pros and cons, and knowing the importance of trying to work on both. So I'm not going to spend too long in conversation here, but I did want to share there was been some amazing conversation on discourse, or there's some amazing thoughts coming up on discourse on this. So I'll start by reading the first 3 verses. Alif Lam Ra, these are messages of revelation, clear in itself and clearly showing the truth. Behold, we have bestowed it from on high as a discourse in the Arabic tongue, so that you might encompass it with your reason. In the measure that we revealed this Qur'an unto thee, O Prophet, we explain it to thee in the best possible way, seeing that before this you were indeed among those who were unaware. And so in the curriculum, in the reflection section, it says in the second verse, God tells us the exact reason why the Quran was revealed in Arabic, meaning so that people of time could hear God's message in a language they could understand. And the question is, how has the Arabic language of the Quran been presented to you? So this is from Discord, some quotes from Discord on that question. So one person wrote, yes, during my journey of coming to Islam, I was presented with the idea that Arabic and only Arabic was the true language of the deen. This is very daunting because I'm dyslexic, but I took it as the truth that 7th century Arabic was a language in which the Quran was revealed. Reading this verse makes me understand the universality of the message of the Quran. It is not meant for only one people at only one time, but it is a living document. It can and should be read in interpretation with understanding. It is not a dead text or in any way constrained by one language. That being said, the original Arabic is incredibly beautiful and lends itself well to being a living document for all languages, for all people, and for all times. Someone else wrote, I was pleasantly surprised to read 12:2. When I first converted, I had a lot of pressure to learn Arabic so I could, quote, read the Quran, unquote. I memorized Salat in Arabic, but also took the meaning to heart. The sound of the Quran recited in Arabic is beautiful and inspiring. However, I cannot yet understand most of it. I'm learning Arabic slowly. Merely reciting it, while beneficial at some level, doesn't help me learn the message. I'm focusing on reading the Quran in English so I can apply its lessons to my life and be fully aware of what to practice and why. Inshallah, one day I will be able to read and comprehend Arabic. How beautiful to be able to read it in its original form. It's also helpful because translations can lose nuance. So these 2 comments from Discord, I thought, did a really nice job talking about, in not oversimplifying it, but really talking about the importance of understanding and using reason, and at the same time understanding that there's something that, in the Arabic language, in the past we've talked about what it kind of does to you on a cellular level and rhythmically and all of that type of thing, and both those things can be true. But I think both these comments kind of share a problem the Muslim community has with imposing only Arabic as the only way to reach God, and what that does to a person. So thank you for these. I am going to try to bring in each time a little bit from Discord so that we can hear that. So as we said, the Quran, this surah about Prophet Joseph asks us to use our reason in understanding. And so then keeping going, why is the Prophet Joseph's story so meaningful? God tells us very clearly, indeed, in the story of Joseph and his brothers, there are messages for all who search after truth. So in the QLP, we are here because we are searching after truth. So let's make our intention as we go through and talk about this story, what messages come out to us. And I'm so interested in hearing the messages that you all take. So, in particular, this is part of the curriculum. Out of the hundreds and thousands of prophets who have come to humanity, and 117 billion plus billion humans who have lived on Earth so far, Prophet Joseph is the only prophet and only human who God honored by telling his full life story in the Quran from beginning to end. Okay. There's a famous hadith, and we're going to go to a paraphrasing of the next slide, that sheds light on what makes him so special. So as I read of it, the question is going to be how many different categories of people deserving of God's shade does he fall under? So here's the hadith. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, there are 7 people who will be given protection under God's shade on the Day of Judgment, when there will be no shade except for the shade of God's throne. And they are a just ruler, a youth who grew up with the worship of God, a person whose heart is attached to the mosque, 2 people who love and meet each other and depart from each other for the sake of God, a person who is called towards illicit sexual relations but they reject it, saying, I fear God, a person who gives charity secretly without showing off, to the extent that their left hand doesn't know what their right hand has given, and a person who remembers God in solitude and their eyes well up. So if you don't mind taking a little snip or a screenshot or picture of this hadith, I'm curious to hear from you, and I'll put it in the chat as well, but what inner spiritual, there's a 2-part question. One is, what inner spiritual state do all these people have in common? And how are they outwardly different? Go ahead, Candace.
I would say the first thing that came to my mind was taqwa, so having like God consciousness, aware of Allah in different situations.
Absolutely.
Oh, can I answer the first
First,
part?
go for it. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Prophet Yusuf or Joseph was solicited by the wife of the nobleman that he was looking for, and he could have said yes, but he didn't. He put his back to her, and she rent his garment. So he's one of the people that is called towards illicit sexual relations, but rejecting it in fear of God.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else?
I would like to share, to add on to Candace's point. I agree that they all have taqwa, and I think that taqwa is deepened by what they are denying. And so I noticed that in each situation, all of them are called to deny something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ruler is denying power, the youth is denying temptation, the person that's attached to the mosque is denying like fitna in other places. The people who love each other are denying their own personal desires. The person who is also turning away from illicit relations is denying temptation. And then the person who's denying, who's giving charity secretly is denying ostentation and riyah. And all of these are qualities of a heart that is pure, or in tasqiyah that will be called like a pure heart, because these are diseases, right? Temptation is a disease of the heart. Showing off is a disease of the heart. Wanting to, meet our lower desires are diseases of the heart. So not only do they have God consciousness, their hearts are purely turned towards one qibla, and is not the ego. It is not what serves them. It's the qibla that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I think the way that they are outwardly different is that the situations that they are in are requiring them to make different decisions, but their qibla are all united in the same direction in their choices and their character.
Beautiful way to put it. Thank you. I did notice, you said, their situations are different, and it's so interesting how some of these are almost opposites. You've got the young and you've got the old. You've got the person with power and the person without power. You've got somebody who grows up with access and to a mosque and community, and you have those in solitude, away from community. Why do you think in this hadith there's so many different, almost opposites?
It's interesting how you phrase that question. As you say, opposites. I mean, if you phrase it that way, sometimes it also makes me think of maybe just the inner struggle and outward struggle. So like jihad, in terms of like the challenges that people face, but also I think it also speaks to a lot of like, there's no one path to Allah. There's multiple paths to Allah. You know, the diversification and pluralism of like, reaching Allah. Like there's not a one size fits all. Everyone's journey is unique. And so that's what it makes me think of. I know it might be a little simplistic of an answer, but that's what I can think of.
Absolutely. And somewhere in here, right, everyone can find themselves, no matter where you live, what your circumstances are. And that's why that second part of the question that I just put in the chat, what category do you want to earn for yourself? That's on us to kind of think through. So I'm not going to ask you to share that, but just look at that hadith one more time and just think for yourself for wherever you are in your life. I'm going to put the hadith up again. We all talked about being a person of truth and beauty at the beginning of this call. So we all have inherently this inner truth, this inner beauty, and the ability to be in at least one of these 7 categories. And these are the 7 people who will be given protection under God's shade in the day of judgment. So take a second just to look at this list again. You don't have to share it out loud, but just think of yourself right now where you are. Which category do you want to earn for yourself, and how will you do? So let's keep going. We talked about the story of Prophet Joseph. We talked about telling us to use reason. In the next couple of verses, there's an interesting parallel. So, starting in verse 4, we thus spoke Joseph unto his father, and it describes the story where Joseph tells a dream to his father. It says, "O my father, behold, I saw in a dream 11 stars, as well as the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrate before me." And later on in the footnotes in the tafsir, scholars talk about that these might be his 11 brothers, and this foreshadows later on when he actually becomes king or the ruler, and they're having to submit to his rule. But when Joseph says this to his father and says, "Hey, father, I had this dream," and I'm assuming he's excited, his father Jacob replies, "Oh, my dear son, do not relate your dream to your brothers, lest out of envy they devise an evil scheme against thee. Verily, Satan is man's open foe." Okay, so he gives him a warning. And there is a question there in the curriculum, an applied question of, who do you share your good news, hopes, and dreams with? It says, take an important lesson from Prophet Jacob to his own son. From now on, protect yourself by making sure you only share news with people who genuinely want the best for you, not those who are envious or jealous. And this includes online sharing too, which is huge today. It's going to be the topic we talk about quite a bit. And Prophet Jacob wasn't just making this up, because you can see a few verses later, as their brothers are speaking to each other, they actually say, "Now Joseph's brothers spoke thus to one another, truly Joseph and his brother Benjamin are dearer to our father than we, even though we are so many. Behold, our father is surely suffering from an aberration." Said one of them, "Slay Joseph, or else drive him away to some faraway land, so that your father's regard may be for you alone. And after this is done, you'll be free to repent, to live once again as righteous people." So with this question, I'm going to ask you to journal right now. Just write down somewhere, because we're going to talk about it towards the end when we come full circle with something else. But journal or write, who do you share your good news, hopes, and dreams with, whether that's in person verbally or whether that's online. And who might you want to be careful of in your own life? So take about a minute and answer that for yourself. So right here, we're set up in this story right away where there's this exciting thing happening, but now you see these brothers plotting with each other, which is, there's a lot of hopelessness in that, right? So in the midst of the hopelessness of the brothers' plots, look at a gift that God gives us. So again, 8 and 9 was talking about the The brothers saying, Joseph's more dear, let's slay him. Verse 10 says, another of them, meaning another brother or another person, said, do not slay Joseph, but rather, if you must do something, cast him into the dark depths of this well when some caravan can pick him up. And if you know the story, you know that's what they end up doing. They don't kill him, they put him in a well, and he gets found from that well. So the power of a single voice. Even within an evil group plotting murder, there was one older brother who spoke up on behalf of Joseph. And it was this one voice that made the difference between Joseph being killed or saved. Even when you find yourself outnumbered in a hopeless situation, still speak up for good. You never know how big an impact you might have. There's a lot of implications for this today. And I'm curious to hear from people in the group, how does knowing this example of the Quran of a power of a single voice, affect you with all the events happening around us today? I'm going to go back to the verse. So again, the older brother said, do not slay Joseph, but rather, if you must do something, cast him to the dark depths of the well, when some caravan can pick him up. Now, someone could say, well, he was just as bad. He didn't say stop, don't do it. He didn't stop them from doing it. If he was the older brother, he may not have had power to do anything in that group. But on the other hand, we know that this made the difference. Oops, where'd I go? Between him being killed and later on saved in the rest of the story. I'm going to stop sharing. Any thoughts on reactions to this? How does knowing this or hearing this and how it's laid out in the Quran affect you with what's going on right now?
One thing I can think of is the concept of trust not being taken lightly. Because, it's it's a very challenging example, right? That's being given. It's a direct family member, it's a sibling, it's kin. So I think it challenges us to be more careful in how we trust people, and trust needs to be earned. And I guess just to be careful with the concept of trust. That's just one thing that I can think of.
Yeah.
And also, I think, going back to your original point of sharing on social media, right? I think we feel a lot of pressure to share, and you don't necessarily need to share everything with everyone. I think that also can be extrapolated a little bit from this example. Like, it's, people that are closest to you share certain information with, and then, other people you share other things with. So that's actually quite normal. I think we've kind of denormalized it, or we've made it a practice to just share everything with everyone. So I think that's another concept that can be, I think, extracted from this verse and the discussion.
Absolutely. Any thoughts on what Fatima said? Or on that idea of saying something even when you don't think it's going to have any impact? Why we should still do that?
I can answer a little bit about why this question feels so scary.
Okay, go for it.
Because, I feel like in the context of learning Qur'an and understanding the message, to have to take such a public stance on what's going on in the world and the impact of my voice feels really heady and feels really big, because there's a lot of misinformation around what Islam is, what we believe as Muslims. And so as I'm still developing a relationship with Islam, based in love and based in the trust that Fatima mentioned, it's difficult to say, this is exactly what I would say against the things that are going on in the world, right? Eventually, I would like to be able to cultivate a voice that speaks with truth and sincerity on issues such as those things, but from a place that is rooted in what is just and what Allah has instructed, as opposed to what I have heard, and what I have read about online. And so I can really speak to the fact that being educated in a Western system, you're taught a lot about what the harms are, and you're taught to use your voice to talk about the harm, to talk about racism, xenophobia, sexism, genocidal things, violence in the world. but you're not necessarily given the tools to think about how that impacts you spiritually and what you do with an understanding of that harm. And that's really what this program and my deepening relationship with the Quran is giving me. It's giving me the voice to understand how to use it, what Allah has instructed for me to do in order to heal from the things that I see and in order to take action that is just and that is sincere, not motivated by my desire for power or not motivated by a desire to fix things in the way that I see them. And so, in the context of what we talked about as it relates to that one older brother, I think sometimes it feels that way. You don't necessarily have the biggest voice to say, murder is absolutely wrong. Though you feel it and you know it and you understand why, you might be still developing the knowledge and the tools to be able to address it. But you can think, like, okay, what is just in the situation that I am in? What can I do to make sure that I'm still using my voice in a way that does not produce or continue the harm? That's what I can say from the little knowledge that I've gained so far. But like I said, to say a declarative, this is what is happening in the world and what I would do about it, it feels pretty scary.
Well, I think that's such an important reflection on what this. We don't know what this brother may have been going through. This older brother. We don't know who he was, what his personality could be. We only have what's here and what's written in the Quran. But part of me wonders, was he in that same spot that you're describing? That I'm in this place where I know this isn't right, but I don't know what I would say, what I would do. I don't have that script ready to go. And a lot of times I feel like that too, that there's so much out there that I feel like I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I should be doing that. But I just, there's a hesitation. And I think here it's okay. It's okay to say it doesn't have to be perfect, the what we say and how we say it and what we do. But even in the act of doing something, taking that first step, there's power in that. And the power, he may not have thought there was any implication in what he did. He may have said, we still left him. I said something and something bad still happened. But look at what Allah actually planned. Fatima, let me go to you. And then I do see a comment in the chat as well.
Yeah, to keep it brief, I think it's also just, there's a huge, I think, culture of fear also.
Yeah.
I think it just doesn't encourage people to speak up, and we keep a lot of things private for that reason, because there are deep consequences for things that we say or things that we opine. And unfortunately, like, everything is kind of out in the open, and this concept of free speech, I think, is not really valid in today's world. At least here, it's there's a lot of challenges, at least from my perspective, that prevents people from speaking up. So
it's not as simple as saying, just say it.
That's the thing. Yeah, it's also, I think, also hard when you have a family or people that you are responsible for. Like, it always, as a mom, I always think twice. Okay, like, if I say this or if I do something, there's like going to be deep consequences on, like, not just me but everybody else. So I think that fear is always in the back of my mind. I think it would be a lot easier for me to just do whatever I want if I didn't have all of these people that I'm also responsible for, and whose lives may be impacted by something that I do or say. So, yeah.
And what a deep way I think this conversation is taking the psychological impact on the idea of speaking up or speaking truth to power. And how in the Quran, this is just a quick verse it said about that brother, that, to tell you the truth, before the curriculum, I never thought twice. I just know the brothers put him in the well. Like, I know that part of the story. But who knows what the brother had to protect? Because if you think about, what did the brother not do? He didn't tell anybody that they had done this. He didn't go tell the authorities. He didn't go tell his father. He didn't go back and get him after the well. There's a lot of things that he could have thought, maybe I should do that, but for whatever reason, he decided not to. But what does the Quran choose to focus on? That he says something, in whatever context he said it in. Sister Najma, you put a comment in the chat, and I wanted to give you a chance to share that.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Very good. As a Muslim, we follow Fard Kafaya, which means we must always do something against what is evil. And even if we do not have the physical means or power to prevent evil, we can resist with our voice. We can make a speech in favor of truth, justice, and empathy. And after I wrote that, I thought of something else, because in this political climate, we can often make a donation. If you have the funds, or make a donation of your time if you have the energy to work against what we know is evil.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for pointing that out. And I see hearts coming around and thumbs up. Any other thoughts on this part of the conversation before we keep going?
One thought that I had was there's definitely moments when if you're have been in a group or one-to-one, somebody says something that's offensive and it can be difficult to speak up. I know I had one coworker who would make these racist comments in front of me, and I started speaking up more, and I thought it might not make much of a difference, but maybe there might be somebody else in her life who says something to her too. And it's just like that kind of trickle effect that sometimes, inshallah, things can become more just.
Absolutely. And sometimes we don't know what the effect is. We may not ever see the effect in our lifetime. But trusting in Allah that there will be something, we try to do something. Thank you all for that. Okay. For the next part. Oh, good. It did come in the chat. Is there anybody here who has either read about or studied manipulation techniques? Anyone who likes watching the cop shows, who spends hours on YouTube doing interrogation videos? No, I'm not saying that's me, but it's interesting, right? So let's talk a little bit about manipulation, because the next part of Prophet Joseph's stories is, it says the brothers take him to the well, they leave him in the well, and they have to come back and talk to their father, right? And actually, this is actually, what do they say before to make their father let him go with them, and what do they say after? So this is a fascinating series of ayahs where there's a lot of quotes from the brothers. So let me go ahead and share my screen one more time. Okay, so from 12:11 to 12:18, and I put it in the chat for you as well, but feel free to take a picture of this or a snip of this. We're going to read through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different ayahs where it talks about things that these brothers did or told their father. Now we know in the Quran, if there is something that many different verses are dedicated to, there's something important we have to pick up. So the question for us to think about, and this is where I said if there's any of those people who have studied manipulation and know different tactics, what are you seeing in these verses? What different manipulation tactic or techniques are the older brothers using to coerce Jacob the father into entrusting them with Joseph? Because remember, this is a father who already has told Joseph, don't tell your brothers. He knows that envy is there. Okay, so let's see if we can come up. I'm gonna read through these verses, and we're actually gonna go into breakout rooms. We'll probably do 2, Dr. Nadia. And in those breakout rooms, just go through this and see all the different things you can come up with. What are they trying to do? Okay, so I'm gonna start with 12:11. On this they agreed, meaning their plan to take and put him in a well. And thereupon they spoke thus to their father, O our father, wherefore wilt thou not trust us, meaning why won't you trust us with Joseph, seeing that we are indeed his well-wishers? Let him go out with us tomorrow, so that he may enjoy himself and play. Verily, we shall guard him well. Jacob answered, Behold, it grieves me indeed to think that you might take him with you, for I dread lest the wolf devour him at a moment when you are heedless of him. Said they, Surely, if the wolf were to devour him, notwithstanding that we are so many, and behold, we ought ourselves to perish. Or, if there's so many of us, he's gonna get to us first before they get to him, is what they're saying. And so, when they went away with him, meaning Joseph, they decided to cast him into the dark deeps of the well. And God revealed this unto him, meaning Joseph. You will yet remind them of this, their deed, at a time when they shall not perceive who you are. This is a foreshadowing later on. And at nightfall, they came to their father weeping and said, O our father, behold, we went off racing with one another and left Joseph behind with our things. And thereupon the wolf devoured him. But we know that you wouldn't believe us even though we speak the truth. And they produced his tunic with false blood on it. Jacob exclaimed, Nay, but it is your own minds that have made so terrible a happening seem a matter of little account to you. But as for myself, patience in adversity is most goodly in the sight of God, and it is to God alone that I pray to give me strength to bear the misfortune which you have described to me.
We're room 3. I'll go first.
Sure.
So thank you for choosing these particular verses. Like I was sharing, I've read this surah so many times, and this time I actually read a verse that I've never paid attention to in the same way. So we had a hard time, by the way, kind of trying to come up with like manipulation techniques and like what we were reading. But the thing that we ended up discussing was how appealing to the good nature of uh, Prophet
Yaqub.
Prophet Yaqub's good nature. Like the brothers appealed to his good nature, that if you let him and then let him go with us, he's gonna have fun, we're gonna protect him. And then also kind of saying that because we are in bigger numbers, we have more power, so we can protect him, and kind of insisting. So it felt like um almost like coercion to me, that they were just insisting so much. And then I think Sister Fatima said like it almost felt like not manipulation, but almost like like we should, like he should do it. It's almost like uh forcing, like their dad, like, okay, you know what, we can. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sister Fatima.
Yeah, I was just mostly, I mean, I agree with the terminology of forcing, but I was also saying that they kind of are speaking to his deepest desires and motivations, like really understanding how much he cares and loves for Jacob, and like they're really using that and playing that to their advantage. Like they know what his values are, and then displaying his values like, oh, you care for him, but we care for him just as much or even more. Like they're really like pulling at his desires and motivations. Anyways, I'll let you continue, Hala, because you know the rest.
Okay, and then we talked about, I can stop here, by the way, but I'm just looking at the verse, and the thing I wanted to reflect about was how they produce false evidence with the tunic, with the blood. And I think that's one of the ways people who are trying to cover their story, they always try to produce false evidence. Like if you look at all these criminal shows, like they show that the person leaves like an alibi that goes to the wrong another direction, because they don't want the evidence going towards them. So I thought that was very interesting, because I'd never thought about it like that. And then last point, which I'm gonna stop now so I can hear other people, but I can come back to.
No, say it. What was the last point?
So in verse number 15, it says in the last part of the verse, and we revealed unto him, thou wilt yet remind them of this their deed at a time when they shall not perceive. So this is a verse that talks about how Prophet Yusuf was given this inspiration that to be patient, perhaps,
Mm.
that there will come a time where you will be able to remind them of this wrongdoing, but they will not know at that time. And that's when they come with the caravan to collect food when there's
Mm.
the drought going on, and he reminds them of when they had thrown their brother in the well, but they had no idea that that was him. So I just
Mm.
never noticed that verse in that particular light. Maybe because the translation is so specific, like I was able
Mm.
to read it in that connection. So thank you for
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, and I know you said in your breakout room you've read the story so many times, and that one never stood out to you before. So that's a miracle of the Quran. But yes, and I think that last point of if we how can I think it has implications for us when we're at our lowest, and it literally says right here the dark depths of the well, when we're in the darkest place. How can we be open to hearing guidance from God at that point that might not help us at that point? It's not going to help him for a very long time, but at least will set us up for knowing in the future something. Wonderful. Okay. Let's see if I can. I'm trying to see if I can see people and type your ideas at the same time. Which group would like to go next? Um, Go ahead, Rokiatu.
Okay, yes, we had a great conversation. Sister Gwen figured out all the manipulation tactics like within 5 minutes. Like
She can spot them. We're
she
not going to trick
spotted it so quick. We
her.
didn't have to do anything. She just knew right away. So she went verse by verse, actually.
Great.
And she said, okay, so in this verse, in the first verse, they were guilt tripping the dad because they were basically suggesting that Jacob would Prophet Yusuf would prefer to play with them than stay at home. So it was kind of playing to this idea, like maybe Yusuf doesn't like what he's doing currently, so he definitely deserves some fun, right? If you love him so much, then let him have fun. So it was a little bit of guilt tripping. And then she was able to also spot that they were gaslighting him in the ways that they were trying to get him to like doubt the fact that a wolf could attack him. They're like, that doesn't make sense because there's so many of us that it couldn't happen to him, right? And then to turn it around, they definitely continue the guilting because Sister Gwen pointed out that they used the very same fear that Prophet Jacob had in order to be the reason that he was no longer with them. So the wolf comes back again and they say, oh, actually, that was a pretty good lie. The wolf is the reason why he's not with us. So they guilt tripped him in two situations. One with how they made him feel like Jacob or Prophet Yusuf was not enjoying himself and needed to play. And then again, when they suggested that his very idea, the fear that he had, is actually what came about. So he might have felt to blame for why the situation might have happened because he initially was the one that said it. And then further down, we were able to discover that there were a lot of differences between, we talked a little bit about how in some families, there's a difference between the people who are the truth tellers and the people who are the secret keepers. And this was also Sister Gwen, where the secret keepers sometimes tend to control so much of the emotional and psychological weight of the family. They seem to have so much more power and they're able to manipulate people around what is shared as the truth of the family and then what is kept hidden. And then we talked a little bit about what names of Allah might have been produced through this story based on what Prophet Yusuf went through. We talked about how they used the shirt, the fake evidence, to produce this lie. And then the shirt came back again when Prophet Yusuf had to show that he was completely committed to Allah. It was his shirt that was torn from the back. So we were like blown away. Again, our minds were blown by how like Allah can use something so small as the reason and the indication that shows that we're entirely committed to Him. So, like something that starts off as a lie or something that starts off in falsity is something that can ultimately reveal the truth of the love and taqwa for Allah. And then some names that we discussed in the group. Oh, and then Sister Anna shared a really great point about how the brothers were always layering themselves in secrecy. They were always hiding their intentions, hiding what was really in their heart, hiding their motivations for what they wanted for their brother. But the name of Allah that Sister Anna mentioned was Al-Alim, all-knowing, because even if you layer all the things that your motivations and your intentions that are not so good, even if you layer those things in secrecy, Allah is still all knowing and Allah still understands every single thing that happens. And then another name we discussed was Adar because we knew that that pain that Prophet Jacob probably faced, realizing that Prophet Yusuf was no longer around, only Allah could give that type of pain to us, right? But also Al-Wali, because he was the one that was with Prophet Yusuf in that well. Only he could accompany Prophet Yusuf in that way, in the darkest and deepest time.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Crystal.
And I love how you all took the manipulation technique and flipped it because that's what happens in the surah. There's so many times where it comes back around. And we didn't have time to talk here, but last year we talked about, in the curriculum, it talks about zawj or pairs and how what happens in the first half of the surah mimics in a different way what happens in the second half of the surah. So definitely be reading that in the curriculum. It's amazing. But I do want to point out what you guys mentioned here, where it says, Jacob says, I'm afraid the wolf devours him. And where it says, be careful who you tell your wishes to. Later on, let's see, where is it? Also, be careful of who you share your fears with. Because there are people, organizations, companies, digital technologies that will seek to use our personal information against us. So even in how we're searching of things of the internet, be very careful because that can be used to sell you things or whatever it might be. So in this, I'm afraid of the wolf coming, and that's exactly what they said. The wolf devoured him. So, I think both groups mentioned that, but this is an actual police technique. Not that I saw this in a YouTube interrogation video, but there was a famous one where when a person would not admit to anything, the police suggested something to them that seemed less. They knew that this man murdered his wife in this case, and they said, was it because you walked in when she was murdering the kids? No, he murdered the wife, and they knew he murdered the kids. And he latched on to that later on and said, yes, that's what happened. She was the one who was murdered. And so this is a manipulation technique used, an actual, if you're studying in manipulation, that's a very specific technique that's used. So thank you guys so much. Okay, next group.
I can go.
Sure.
Okay, so we were group 2, and so Sister Rakiato already kind of mentioned what we came up with, but promise we're not cheating. But
No,
we came up
think
with
cheating.
basic lies, just lying, just flat out lying, and then parental guilt, gaslighting, exploitation of the healthy trust, and kind of foretelling the future that if a wolf is to get him, even though it's a lot of us, then, kind of like throwing your hands up, like, then we can't do anything. And then that's exactly what they presented him with, the evidence. And yeah. Sister Najma did mention something very interesting, which was, it seems like that they weren't fooling anybody, and Prophet Jacob knew what they were up to. Which kind of leads me to question, then why did he allow it to happen? Because he was a prophet himself, but not that he had knowledge of the future, but I guess he knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also has a plan above. Even though he recognized the manipulation, he kind of let it happen because he gave Prophet Yusuf and Allah's protection.
Hmm. I mean, that's a great question. Why would he let them take him if he already knew that how they were? But I'm going to let you keep going, but it's just something for people to think about.
No, I mean, I asked that question. I did answer it, which I don't have any evidence for it. Maybe more studies need to be done, but um, it was just that he knew to an extent what would transpire, and he knew that was Allah's plan, and he allowed it to happen.
Absolutely. I wonder how many of us have gone back on something in our lives and said, "I knew I shouldn't have done it, and I did it. This is my fault." Has anyone experienced that? And here, God is clearly saying this is not Jacob's fault. He knew how the brothers were. It still happened, but there is no blame on Jacob. To me, that helps me with when I go back and I'm like, I knew I shouldn't have done that, and I did it anyway. Releasing some of that guilt from myself. Sometimes things happen for certain ways that are meant to happen. So I just thought of that when you mentioned that. Was that the end of the list? Oh, go ahead, Conma.
No, I was just saying that even if you have that voice in the back of your head that you're not really quite listening to, but you go through with your plan against your better judgment, it does offer comfort that, oh, this is how it was supposed to happen.
It does comfort. Yep. Thank you all so much. I wanna look at this idea of parental guilt because also many of you have mentioned this idea, and I hadn't paid attention so much to this until this time when you all mentioned it. Was let us go so he can enjoy himself and play. What do we know about Prophet Jacob was that he was much older when Joseph was born. So he probably wasn't the one rolling on the ground with him and playing with him and all that kind of stuff. So you all mentioned they're playing to his guilt. So let's be careful of what we're guilty about, because that can be used against us. And let's be careful of what, especially parental guilt, especially mom guilt, because that is there and that is real. So let's take some of this thing to kind of check some of that guilt so that we're not putting that out there and then using it to attack ourselves. Hala.
So this actually came during the discussion. Sister Zen brought it up. How sometimes, the youngest kids have, they're like the apple of the eyes, or they're like really annoying. And and it's human nature, right? Like we study in psychology how, there's all these sibling rivalries, like, the youngest child getting all the resources or time. And that kind of transpires a different type of relationship between the siblings. So I think it's also a time for parents to reflect, like, how are we enabling that type of a relationship? And I actually had this discussion today with my own mother of how she needs to manage a relationship with, different siblings in a way that it doesn't affect our relationship with each other in a negative way. And it's really hard because if I think we were reflecting how Prophet Joseph, because he had been given this dream and because he was so blessed and his character was refined, the parent probably naturally had this affinity towards him because he was God's chosen one already. So sometimes, like, I think you mentioned this, Nadia, too, right? Like how the parental guilt kind of is like projecting, right? So it's easy to prey on the fears. And I think I'm guilty of that, as you can understand today. um yeah, it's a very good point to reflect on, and I'm continuously guilty of, or I shouldn't say guilty, working on the sibling part where
Yeah.
I don't enable that type of behavior where I'm like, oh, the little one like needs XYZ, and the older one's gonna always mention this, right? Like, oh, you always have this as a favorite, or you care about this person more. So I think it's a very good point that sometimes we have to check ourselves because we have blind spots, and sometimes we enable that. So yeah, that's my last point. And please, sister Zan and sister Fatma, if you guys have anything else that I missed, please go ahead and share. Thank you so much.
Well, it's such an important part, whether we're parents or whether we're children of parents, to know that even Prophet Jacob, who was a prophet of God, somehow in his interactions with his kids, something went amiss where it's resulting in these real rivalries and tensions. Maybe we can think about our own parents where that may have happened and have a little more, or maybe that'll help us with those of us who are struggling with our parents. I'm going to end because I know there's just these discussions go so good. But I do want to end with a how the surah ends with a dua. So if you remember from 12:6, when Jacob said to Joseph, you know, as you've been shown in your dream, even thus will your sustainer elect thee, will impart unto thee some understanding for the inner meanings of happiness, will bestow the full measure of his blessings upon you and upon the house of Jacob, even as aforetime he bestowed it in full measure upon your forefathers Adam and Isaac. Verily, the sustainer is all knowing and wise. We end in verse 101. A lot of other things happen that we could talk about, but we end with this dua, and I put it in the chat so you could copy it, and maybe this is something that you want to take with you this week and lean into. This dua is, and this is what Yusuf says, Prophet Yusuf says at 101. O my sustainer, thou hast indeed bestowed upon me something of power, and has imparted unto me some knowledge of the inner meaning of happiness. Look how that language directly comes from the language from verse 6. Originator of the heavens and the earth, you are near unto me in this world and in the life to come. Let me die as one who has surrendered himself unto you, and make me one with the righteous. Ameen. So Dr. Nayawiya, with that, I will turn it back over to you.
Alhamdulillah. This was really some amazing work that you all have done in today's discussion. And, some of the videos that we post, I go back and watch them a lot. So if you see 100 views, I probably did about because I'm really so blown away with your insight. And it kind of shows that there's still so much to be mined out of the Quran, especially for us in our current time and situation. And it didn't stop. That need did not stop in the 7th, 8th, or 9th century, that it is still ongoing. So alhamdulillah for the work that you're doing. I just wanted to let you know that we are on target to bring back our Juma services in October. And inshallah, we want to start off back in October because that's Hassan's birthday. So inshallah, that Friday, the 2nd, is what we're targeting. But just in case, we'll still do October, but we're targeting October 2nd in particular because that is Hassan's birthday. So inshallah, what we would like to do is a founders appreciation weekend, and have start off with Juma on that Friday, and then perhaps have some type of get together on Saturday, and then on Sunday our Qur'an Literacy Program, and maybe do another open session as we did some months ago. So this is what we're working on. This is what we're planning. What's needed? We need you. We need your support. We need your knowledge. We need your know-how. We need your time. We need your donations, because once we start, we would like to keep this going one Friday every month. And in order to do that, the cost of rental, the cost of security, because we must have security, the cost of childcare. We need your help in doing that. So if you can go to our website, womensmosque.com, and you can find a donation page, And also there is a page for signing up for volunteers. So what I will likely do is in about about a month from now, have a gathering, kind of like a volunteer fair, so that we can all meet. If you're in the LA area, you can meet, and we'll just kind of map out the particular help that we need, such as setup, take down, hospitality, things like that, because we're really trying to get organized so that by October, we're ready to hit the ground running and keep our Dumas going on every month. That's the goal. So inshallah, everything is on target for that. Look for the next newsletter. It should have more information, more particulars in that. So if you're not on the newsletter, go to the website and sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get all of that information. I think that's about all. Is there any questions? Anybody have any questions for me? No? Well, great. I hope I will see you soon in Los Angeles for a get together so that we can sit down and really plan out how we're going to make this happen in October. But right now, everything looks like it's in place and we're ready to go. Just need you to help us out. So inshallah, I will close out with a dua and see you all next Quran Literacy Program, discussion number 7, August 2nd. Okay? All right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. Assalamu alaikum, and I will see you all next time, inshallah. Take care, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.